Today we've got a 1995 Buick LeSabre and it needs some brake pads installed. So we're going to show you how to do that. It's very simple. This is a great do-it-yourself project because it's very easy to do. First thing we did was took the wheel off. We turned the steering wheel so that we have access to the two bolts a little easier, and we can also see the brake pad through this little window here. So try to make it so that it's easier for you to do the work. So basically, we get the wheel off. We're going to go ahead and remove the caliper. We're going to show you a little trick to compress this piston into the caliper, and this is something you can do without having any special tools. You just need a big flathead screwdriver or a strong piece of metal, and you're basically going to wedge it in here and use the caliper and the old brake pad as wedge tools, and you're going to squeeze the piston back into the caliper. One thing you do have to make sure is that you pop the cap off of the master cylinder. The master cylinder is located under the hood. Pop the hood, take the cap off of it. When you push this piston back in, it's going to push brake fluid back up through the line and into the master cylinder. If the fluid is old, really old and dirty, it's good to get rid of that fluid. You want to flush it out. You could technically, by the book, the proper way is to pull this bleeder valve open, which you just pop, you loosen this up, then push the piston in, and you'll see all this dirty, nasty brake fluid come out. So we're going to go ahead and show you how to compress that piston into the caliper. So we're using an old nasty drill bit. It's not an important part of our tool set, so if it bends or gets damaged, it won't bother us. We basically take the small end, we're going to put it inside the caliper, and we're going to put the end of it on the inside of the pad. I'm going to use the very end of it for leverage, and I'm basically just going to grab it, start pulling towards me, and you can see that piston, you can see it going right into the caliper. Do it nice and slow. There's no reason to force the fluid in there. All the way till it's all the way in. You basically move it around, go top to bottom. Make sure the piston's pushed in all the way. And that's one step out of the way. The piston's fully compressed into the compressor. Next, we'll take the two big bolts out of the back of the caliper. Basically, we've got these two bolts right here. Those are 3/8 caliper bolts. You can see we have a 3/8 inch ratchet and socket. It fits right into the bolt like so. Pop it loose. Very, very simple. And once that's out all the way, then we'll be able to lift our caliper right off. You want to avoid hanging it by that brake hose. So lift it off. You can turn it, sit it right up here so you can get access to the pads. This inside pad just pops right out. It's got a clip. I'll lay it down. The outside one has a clip also. You can use a flathead to just kind of pry it up a little bit. Same thing on this side. You're just basically prying that spring up, and that pad comes right out. Okay, so we have our new pads here, and we have the old ones. The first thing we're gonna do before we try to install them is we're gonna match them up exactly and make sure we have the correct pad, make sure we have the right side. One way you can determine that is, first of all, this little wear indicator. That's the little metal wear indicator that rubs up against the rotor to tell you need pads. And you can see the wear indicator is about the same distance to the rotor as the pad is. That means the pad's worn out and it needs new pads. Compare that to a new pad. It's got a lot more brake pad material on it, and you can see that it's got a lot more material, and also the wear indicator is now a lot lower than the pad is. The inside pad, same thing. Just verify it, make sure it's the right one. You want to do it now before you put them in the caliper and have to worry about taking them back out of the caliper. Another thing to look at on these pads, these are a great quality pad. They're manufactured by Wagner, and they're called Thermoquiet. They've got beveled edges. They've got shims pre-installed. The shims that are attached like that they're not coming off. They prevent squealing and squeaking. These are OEM quality. They make these for a lot of companies, a lot of manufacturers that are on cars originally. So Wagner, they make a great product. We do sell them on our website. at autopartsdirecttoyou.com. So now we're ready to put the pads back into the caliper and install the caliper back on the car. So we take our inside pad, we're going to place it where it's supposed to be. The clip basically fits right inside the piston, and then you push it in there till it snaps in place. The outer pad is the same thing. It's got a metal clip on it. It also has these two raised round little pins. Those pins line up with these two holes. If you don't have them lined up, the pad will be sitting in too far. You won't get it over the rotor. So you basically lay it over there. You can push it right on by hand, really. If anything, you can lift up on the clip, and they snap into place, and you can see a little round hole is lined up with the pin. Okay, so now we basically roll the caliper back down, place it over the rotor. One thing that's important, we've already done it, is we've cleaned and lubricated these slides. These slides are what the pad rides on to stop or to pull against the rotor. So we've cleaned those up with a metal brush, and then we lubed it up so they'll slide properly. Then you basically start snugging these up. If you have the caliper sitting properly, it's really nothing to line these caliper bolts in. They go right in just like this one did. One thing, I wouldn't tighten one up all the way. You really never should do that when you're installing anything. Make sure all the bolts are started. Basically, that's all there is to it. Last thing we're going to do is put the wheel on. Before we test drive it, we're going to pump the brake pedal. Pumping the brake pedal seats the brake pads to the rotor. It's very, very important you do that. If you don't do that and you go to drive the vehicle, the first couple times you hit the brakes, you may not have any brakes. So be sure to pump the brake pedal up after you're done, to make sure those pads are seated.